Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 775A, and today's date is September 25th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Hope Fades Away as the Economy Continues to Collapse. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. The interview with Stephen Lenman is now on the X22 Report Spotlight channel. You can go right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, bring you right to the video, or you can come over to the x22report.com site. Scroll down a little bit, you'll see it on the right-hand side, and you can play it right from there. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. In the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing the market continuously fluctuate. And if you noticed, the market really doesn't go anywhere. When it falls, they bring it right back up, but pretty much it's been flatlined. And of course, today's Friday, the plunge protection team, the high frequency traders, pushed the market up as best they possibly could, got it up 100 or so points above flatline to make this weekend feel great. Now, of course, they're saying, oh, the Fed might raise interest rates once again because of the strong economic data. And we've been looking at this economic data, and is there strength behind it? Absolutely not. But they're continually trying to push the meme that we are in a recovery. And they will continue to do this even when the collapse occurs. They will never, ever admit that this system has fallen apart. They just won't do it. They'll blame other people, but they still won't admit that the whole economy is broken. They'll just keep on going with it. They'll say, we can fix it with more money printing. We can fix it by doing this. But none of it fixes the economy. It makes it worse. It makes it better for certain people that are in the know. But for the rest of us, we're sitting on the sidelines. And we're starting to see that America is losing faith in this economy. I mean, the UMich consumer sentiment for September finalized at 87.2, the lowest since October 2014, is the biggest 8-month drop since 2011. People are now starting to realize that something is not right. This economy is not what the government and the Fed is telling us. I mean, they've been promising us wage growth any day, week, month, quarter, promising us that housing is in a recovery. No one's seeing it. They're telling us that retail is in a recovery. It's doing fantastic. It's improving. No one has seen it. They're telling us that unemployment is absolutely incredible. But more and more people are having a harder time finding those high-paying jobs. Actually, in the last couple of months, beginning of 2015, we've seen layoffs. Unicredit, Deutsche, everyone announcing it. Dell, Sony, IBM, Caterpillar. You name it, they're laying off. We don't hear companies going, you know what, we're doing a mass hiring of 10,000 people. And these are going to be all high-paying jobs. Have you ever heard that announcement? I haven't. You know why? Because they don't exist. That's why. Because if they did, it would be all over the place. Yes, they come out with the announcement, UPS will be adding 70,000 jobs. But they don't tell you these are temp. And when I mean temp, they're 2 to 3 months. That's it. These aren't jobs. This is extra money to buy holiday gifts. And if you didn't have work, for some people, this is their job, but they can't survive on that. Where are the jobs? They don't exist. And when we look at this, and we look at the UMich expected income growth, Americans are starting to give up hope. They're saying it's not there. And it's completely dropping since the beginning of this year. We're seeing more companies laying off. Marvel Technology Group, 17% of the workforce. Aquin Financial Corp, 300. ConAgra, cost cutting, may equal layoffs, which you know that's what's going to happen. University of Arizona, 320. Halliburton Grand Junction office, 100. More and more companies are continually laying off. Not hiring, laying off. Yes, there are places where they're hiring, but these are low-paying jobs. If somebody is coming from an $80,000, $100,000 position, they cannot go and work at a $40,000, $30,000 position, especially if they own a house, a car, and they have all these payments. Basically, they'd go bankrupt. That's what would happen. And we're seeing a lot of people do this. Yesterday, we saw all these red flashing signals letting us know that this economy is headed for a collapse. I mean, the Kansas City Fed, Philadelphia Fed, Chicago Fed, the New York Fed, all of them. Everything's pointing at a huge, huge decline. Durable goods, washing machines, big TVs. No one's ordering them. This holiday season is going to be a disaster. U.S. services PMI dipped in September after 2 months of modest bounce back. The pace of expansion now slowed to 3-month lows, with service sector confidence close to its lowest in 3 years. The latest print indicates a slowdown in overall new business growth for the second month running. And this brought the pace of expansion down to its weakest since January. Market right now is warning. Various warning lights are now flashing brighter, meaning growth may continue to weaken in the coming months. But don't worry. The government just threw out more manipulated, phony statistics to convince everyone that we're in a recovery. They're trying to tell us that the second quarter final GDP numbers went from 3.7%, which we know is completely ridiculous, up to 3.9%. They manipulate them, they revise them, and now they're throwing out there that this economy in the second quarter was incredible. And the quarter before that was a disaster, a quarter before that was a disaster, and now they're trying to convince us that everything is back on track. Well, how did they do this? I mean, they went back, they manipulated the numbers, they added the inventories into it, and to bring this up just a little bit more, you know what they did? They took the consumer spending in the third quarter and stuffed it into the second quarter to boost it up another 0.2%. Well, if they've done that, we would think the third quarter then, that GDP is going to be much lower, right? But their plan right now is to keep everyone in this illusion. And basically, when the third quarter comes out, they'll just revise that again and say, oh, we made a mistake. It wasn't really 1.1%. We revised it. We took the stuff from the fourth quarter. We're going to stick it into the third quarter. We're going to count more Obamacare into it. We'll manipulate that, calculate this, boom. We're at 4% GDP. It's all fake. They just keep moving numbers around. That's all they're doing. And if it's bad, it's the weather. That's all they do. Now, we talk about housing quite a bit, and we saw new construction all of a sudden surge, but the lumber prices, the lumber demand, doesn't reflect this. And if we look at lumber prices, they are the most correlated with ISM and GDP of all industrial commodities, and this is where the problem comes in. Lumber prices have collapsed to 4-year lows. God, it doesn't make any sense that building is just taking off. Well, we proved yesterday it's gone absolutely nowhere. The 33% year-over-year plunge is the biggest right now since the financial crisis and is flashing, guess what? A big red signal that a collapse is on its way. Second, lumber prices have historically led stocks and are pointing to significant downside from here. And if you look at this graph, you can come to the X22Report.com site. You can see it where it leads the stock market. And every time lumber's going up or down, the stock market follows. And finally, third, it appears lumber's decline points to a downside for manufacturing. And right now, we are in a trend of heading down. But of course, no one looks at this. Everyone looks at the GDP numbers that are manipulated. Everyone looks at the unemployment numbers and the stock market. And everyone believes that the economy is doing fine. But we know it isn't. I mean, look at all these red flashing lights that are going off right now, warning us. Right now, it used to be a whisper. Now it's screaming. And you only can hear it if you actually listen. I mean, many people didn't listen when 2008 hit going into 2009. The corporate media, up to the very, very end, was convincing everyone that everything was fine. The government, the Fed, convincing everyone that everything was fine. Actually, this happened in 1929. Right up to the last moment, people thought the economy was absolutely fine. The troubles are only in Europe. They can't come to the United States. And even when they had the scare in August when the market dropped, they thought everything was fixed, everything's fine. Well, aren't we seeing the same exact thing right now? Aren't we seeing the same exact warnings? Isn't the Fed doing the same exact thing as they did in 1927? I mean, we're seeing a carbon copy almost of what happened. And going forward, we know it didn't turn out well. Even Robert Shiller, he's saying long-term economic growth remains slow. Even though there's a rebound in equities and housing, he's saying that there's a clear sign that the market is overheated. And stocks and housing completely overvalued. Well, we kind of know this. We know that this entire economy is not driven by people. It's not driven by the revenue of corporations. It's not driven by people spending. It is manipulated by the central banks. They are the ones who created these economies, not just here in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia. And when we look at the amount of debt that they issued to create these manipulated fake economies, it is staggering. Right now, global bonds are at 100 trillion. Derivatives are at 555 trillion. And the central bank intervention right now, and I'm not just talking about the Fed, I'm talking about the ECB, China's central bank, Japan's central bank. Guess what? One by one, they're losing control. In Japan, the Bank of Japan's policies are demolishing the middle class. The number of Japanese living on welfare just hit a record, and real earnings and household spending have been in free fall since the middle of 2014. In Europe, the ECB's president, Mario Draghi, has admitted in Parliament that he was concerned about deflationary death spiral and admitted that QE was the last tool left. Half of the EC board is against his direction right now. In the U.S., the Fed is now being targeted by Congress. Legislation has been introduced to audit the Fed and force it to abide by the Taylor rule. Also, the Fed appears to be losing control of the system as it fails to increase interest rates, and stocks still collapsed. They're flatline right now. And by the way, even though they introduced the bill, they're never going to audit the Fed. The Fed is a private corporation. They believe they're above the U.S. government, and they'll never let this happen. And we also know that why is the Fed in power? Think about it. Yes, in 1913, They snuck this law in. The president helped them at that time. But why, since that period of time, has the Fed stayed in power? What benefit do they add to the United States government central bankers? I mean, to the United States government, not the central bankers. They don't add any benefit, so why would they keep them? The only reason they would keep them is if they're receiving money, currency from the Fed. What other reason? Why? Because they have these incredible economic skills to keep the country balanced? No. Because they've done such a wonderful job since they were created in 1913? No. The only reason the Fed right now, which is not part of the government whatsoever, is in power is because they use free money, which they create out of thin air, and they give it to the government employees. And this is how they control them. There's no other reason to keep them, because the government has the ability to create its own currency. They don't need the Fed. There's no reason. If they can create a treasury bond, they can create currency. If they can mint a coin, they have the ability. Plus, it's in the Constitution. So there's absolutely no reason. And right now, we can see that all these central banks around the world, as time goes on, they're losing control. The markets right now are fluctuating. People are losing faith. And when this crashes, it will make 2008 look like a picnic. It's going to be absolutely horrific. And of course, what are they doing? They're pushing carbon taxes. They're pushing climate or global warming very, very hard right now, because we're coming out of the summer month. And I'm going to tell you right now, this winter will probably be one of the worst winters we've ever seen, because the entire Earth is not controlled by humans living on the planet. The climate here is controlled by solar output. I mean, think about how long the Earth has been around and what has happened to the Earth. Do you really think the humans on this planet are really affecting what is going on here? No. And it's already proven, because if you look back at the time they told us that all these ice sheets and everything else was going to disappear, well, they haven't. Snow is still here. Actually, it's gotten worse. I remember when they showed us pictures of polar bears floating around saying they're going to drown. Well, that's a complete lie, because their hair is hollow and it is created to float. The fat on the polar bear allows them to float, and their hairs are hollow, which allows them to float. And of course, those pictures were taken during the summer months when the ice broke up, but they didn't take them in the winter, showing the ice all together. This is how they lie to everyone. Now, if you don't think they're lying about that, then there's no reason to listen to me whatsoever, because you really then have to believe their story about the economy, how we're in the right going to war all across the world. But we see that this is not true. We see the government continually lies, and everything they say is always the opposite. I mean, look at Obamacare. Obamacare, when they were pushing it very hard, of course you couldn't read it because it was a secret. They didn't want anyone to know what was really in there. They told us, and this is a quote from the president, Obama said back in 2008, by reducing premiums by as much as $2,500 per family, insurance will be affordable by everybody. Well, guess what? Since 2008, the average family premium has climbed a total of $4,865. And more people who are signing up can't afford it. And those who have signed up pay so much that they're eligible for food stamps. And if Obamacare doesn't reach the magical number of 22 million or so, the whole thing falls apart. Why do you think they want to give citizenship to 8.8 million immigrants? Why do you think they want all the refugees coming in? Because they're going to make them citizens, to put them on Obamacare. There's no possible way to get the 22 million. They try to fudge the numbers, but then all of a sudden they do a reporting and they find out that no, these people dropped out, these people had no identification to show that they were citizens, and it completely falls apart. So Obamacare is getting ready to crash. Now, 72% of Americans are saying their country isn't as great as it once was. This was taken by Bloomberg Politics poll, and they're saying that Americans are fed up with politics. They suspect the wealthy are getting an unfair edge, and they think the country is going in the wrong direction, which I completely agree with. It is going in the wrong direction, and we need to turn it around and make it go in the right direction. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.